Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
All right, welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Tider Insider Television, brought to you, as mentioned, in the open by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don Staley and his group, they do a great job promoting tourism in West Alabama. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Rod, you ready?
I'm ready. You got butterflies.
Well, you only play 12 of them, right, in the regular season. All games are big, but some are bigger than others, and I think that's what we've got coming up this weekend. Top-ranked Alabama hosts number 12, Ole Miss, on Saturday, and the Rebels may be better even than their ranking indicates. Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral has 997 yards passing with 9 touchdowns and 0 picks through just 3 games this season. He comes into the game as a slight Vegas betting odds favorite ahead of Alabama quarterback Bryce Young for the Heisman. Ole Miss leads the nation in total offense. Listen to this, folks. 635.3 yards per game. Now, that is absolutely phenomenal, and 170 more yards than Alabama's average of 465.5, which is not bad. Tide, of course, has played 4 games. One stat that favors the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban is an incredible 23-0 against his former assistant coaches, and he is 2-0 against Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin, who was at Alabama from 2014 to 2016 as the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And now it's time for Coach Talk. Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin, as we mentioned, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at UA from 2014 through 2016. And last year, he gave the Crimson Tide fits as the Rebels put up 48 points, but they still lost the game 63-48. This year, points are one thing, but Kiffin is more focused on his team finding a way to come away with the victory.
Like I said last week, don't see any holes in this team, and kind of like I said, referred to, with free agency, if they did have them, at receiver or linebacker, they filled them. So it'll be very challenging, not just to play them, but to play there. And if you think about it, we've really never played in front of a crowd in 2 years, because of COVID, to go to a true road game. So that brings challenges on its own.
All right, Rod, it's time to start breaking it down. I think this is going to be a high-level, intense football game between two very good teams. Ole Miss is coming into Tuscaloosa with the hopes of doing what they did in 2015, and that's beating Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Of course, they did that the year after they beat them in Oxford. Matt Corral, as I mentioned, is the current betting favorite for the Heisman, with Bryce Young second. Now, listen, I understand they haven't played a great schedule yet. They've only played 3 games, but Louisville is proving maybe to be a pretty good football team. They haven't lost since. And when you're averaging that many yards of total offense, it's clear. We saw it here up close and personal. Lane Kiffin, and he's got some help from Jeff Levy as the offensive coordinator, but Lane Kiffin knows how to coach offensive football. He knows how to get a lot of yards. He knows how to score a lot of points. And another thing that he does, when he finds a weakness, he will exploit it over, and over. And then when you adjust, he'll go toward the area where you adjusted and exploit that. He's a dynamic offensive coach.
Well, he really is. I mean, we saw it last year. Again, we saw it in Oxford. He put up 48 points, and this is a team that has a lot of those players back. You mentioned Matt Corral. Now he's got a full season of experience, so that's certainly helpful. They've got great receivers. They've got good running backs. People think about, okay, here they are. They're a dynamic passing team, but they had 2 backs last year go for a 120-plus against Alabama, so they run the ball extremely well. People say, how do you defend them? Well, I mean, it's really difficult when you talk about the balance that they have, the different ways that they can attack you. So there's certainly, Gary, this Alabama defense, this might be the best offense they see all year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that they're going to see one any better. And Ole Miss is going to come in here brimming with confidence. And I want to say something else, Rodney. Since Lane Kiffin, don't forget, he was, I don't know if fired's the right term, but he left Alabama, a mutual parting in the ways, I guess, before the national championship game. A lot of people feel like had he been here in Jalen Hurts' ear, Alabama would have won that game against Clemson. They barely lost it anyway. He says all the right things, and I do think he respects and appreciates what Coach Saban did for his career. Coach Saban took him off the scrap heap. Let's be honest. At that time, I'm not sure anybody else was looking to hire Lane Kiffin the way it ended at USC. At the same time, I don't think there's any doubt. I've still got sources over there in Mississippi after working over there for a number of years. Lane Kiffin wants to beat Nick Saban badly, and he wants to be the first former Saban assistant to do it. They're going to bring everything they've got. The one thing about Lane Kiffin, Rod, he won't hold anything back. He's not afraid to call any play. He's fearless as a play caller. They're going to bring the kitchen sink on Saturday afternoon now.
Well, I think we can go all the way back to 2009 and look at the game, the way he had that Tennessee team prepared. They were coming off an off week. Alabama was a gassed football team at that time. But listen, they had the game. They lined up to kick the winning field goal against a team that was vastly superior. And I thought he did a fantastic job with that team. He was well prepared last year. And, be honest with you, Gary, I think you talk about Lane Kiffin, how badly does he want this game? I think he's more honed in on this game, more focused on this game than he'll be on some other games. I really do. I think this is how bad Lane Kiffin really wants this game, and I think the Ole Miss team, you mentioned the word confidence. I think that's the real key. I mean, I think they gained a lot of confidence last year that they could have beaten Alabama. They played toe-to-toe with Alabama. They put up over 600 yards of offense. But let's not forget this, too, now. Alabama put up over 700 yards on this defense last year. 63 points. Now, again, I do think Ole Miss has improved defensively. They've done a really good job, DJ Durkin. But I think this Alabama offense, what I saw last Saturday and the last couple of weeks, I think they're starting to develop a lot of weapons.
I know this. We're going to see two of the best quarterbacks in the country on that field in Bryce Young and Matt Corral. Our predictions on the game coming up at the end of the show. Well, this past Saturday night, Alabama got off to a lightning fast start against Southern Miss. How about the opening kickoff? Jamison Williams brought it back 100 yards, and this would be the first of two kickoff returns for touchdowns. That had never been done in the history of Alabama football. Think about that, folks. There aren't many things that you can do in an Alabama football game that have never been done. Jamison Williams did it on Saturday night, and Bryce Young, man, just was phenomenal. Now, he did play well in the fourth quarter, which I think maybe surprised some people. But how about 20 of 22 for 313 and 5 touchdowns? And one of those incompletions was his only interception of the season. And in all fairness to him, he hit Jamison Williams right in that number one. And Jamison let it pop off his chest, and it was picked off. But Bryce was incredible. Roydell Williams, 100 yards rushing. Jace McClellan ran the ball great without Brian Robinson Jr., who was nicked up, should be back on Saturday. And the defense, too, Rod. There you see Will Anderson Jr. I know it's Southern Miss, but they held him to just a little over 200 yards of total offense in that game.
Yeah, they played better, certainly. And, again, the competition certainly means a lot. Again, you're coming off that performance at the Swamp where they did not play as well in the second half. But, Gary, when you start looking at that Ole Miss game, the defense really obviously that's what everybody's going to be focusing on heading into this game. How does Alabama's defense deal with this Ole Miss offense? Can they get off the field? Can they create some turnovers? Can they do anything to get some stops?
I told you this a few weeks ago, Rod. You'll recall I said, I've got a source that's really close to Jaleel Billingsley, and he told me, don't worry about Jaleel. Football's important to him. He'll get it worked out. He'll get it right. Well, he's got it worked out. He's back. He had a huge game on Saturday night.
He really did. And look, that was an incredible throw from Bryce there in the corner to Jaleel Billingsley. And again, this is a real weapon. Yeah, this is a real weapon, number 19. When you talk about Jaleel, you talk about Cameron Latu, who had a good game as well. He's really a fantastic player. You mentioned the running backs, Gary. Jamison Williams now starting to come around. JoJo Earl in the slot. John Mechie, we know about these guys. I see all these weapons starting to come together. And Bryce Young, 20 of 22 was fabulous. I think he's gaining a lot of confidence. And this is an offense that I think, too, Gary, listen, they hear everyone talking about Ole Miss.
Sure.
And what about us? We're pretty good, too.
I was going to say, too, we talk about the confidence Ole Miss has. I think in that game, I know it was Southern Miss, but you wanted to play well, and they did. Coming off that Florida game, Alabama's going to be brimming with confidence, too, Rod, in the way that they played in that game. So, listen, there's not much that we can add. It's going to be a big game on Saturday, but Alabama very strong against Southern Mississippi. Do you have a major takeaway from that game? One or two things that really you feel like will serve Alabama well going forward?
Well, I just go back to what I said, one thing about all these playmakers starting to emerge. Jamison Williams. If you're Ohio State, you've got to be saying, this guy returns 2 kickoffs in one game. He has an 81-yard touchdown reception. One of the more phenomenal performances I've seen at Alabama. And then, again, I think, too, Gary, is just the way in a game like this they executed. I thought, obviously, at a very, very high level. So that's something that as you start to look forward at this Alabama team as they're moving forward, they made progress. And I think it's a team that's really starting to come together offensively right now. And again, I think this is a real challenge defensively we're going to see on Saturday.
And I'll remind you once again our predictions on Alabama and Ole Miss coming up at the end of the show. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV, Alabama football adds another commitment. Find out more about the Georgia prospect who's big, athletic, and strong, which is what you're looking for in an offensive tackle. We'll have that coming up next. And how does the Crimson Tide plan to get back to the Bama standard versus Ole Miss? Hear the players talk about it next. And, of course, a little bit later on, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. A phone number, as always, to reach us, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us, TITV@WVUA23.com, or you can tweet at us. Please use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only, award-winning Tider Insider TV.
You know, they're going to be a good challenge for us for the season. You know, they do a lot of fastball, so we got to prepare well for that. You know, that Bama standard, you know, we got to bring that Bama standard all week long, just get the guys rolling and be ready to play come Saturday.
Defensive tackle Phidarian Mathis, he knows all about the Bama standards. He's been here 5 years. You better believe he's going to be a leader for that defense on Saturday. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Now, earlier today, Alabama football recruiting, as you predicted, added a big piece in both the literal sense in terms of who this player is, but also in the recruiting rankings. Four-star offensive tackle Elijah Pritchard from famed Carver High School in Columbus, Georgia, picked the Crimson Tide live on the CBS HQ live stream. There you see it. He went with the shoes and then the hat. Pritchard, 6'6", you know, 280 to 290 range, very athletic. He picked Alabama over Florida State, Georgia, and others, including Southern Cal. Pritchard made an official visit in June and was back on campus this month for Alabama's game with Mercer. It was at that time that he told Nick Saban he wanted to be part of something special. It's a huge pickup for the 2022 signing class, which now has 15 commitments. And Rodney, again, we've seen Alabama focus a lot on offensive linemen, regardless of how many they have on the roster. That's because, as we've discussed, it's one of the hardest positions to get 5 guys that can play together, and you have to have numbers because everybody doesn't pan out. But they have gotten, in the last 2 or 3 years in particular, a number of very tall, athletic, long-armed offensive tackles. Elijah Pritchard's another one.
Yeah. Listen, I think he's one of the best, Gary. When you look at him physically, you mentioned all of his credentials in that regard. And I'll tell you what, Nick Saban talks about finishing. This guy finishes. Look at him. I mean, when he locks on to somebody, Gary, it's usually he puts him on the ground. He's very aggressive. I mean, obviously he's raw to some extent. He's got a lot of development to do, but he's got all the tools.
Gosh,
I mean, he
look how much
really
taller he is than
yeah, I
those
mean,
players.
he just, you know, he's a guy that when you think about David Ballou and Dr. Matt Ray, when they get a hold of him and what they can develop him into, it's pretty impressive. And again, I like Pritchard. I think to me, he's a 5-star potential guy. And then also they've got Tyler Booker, as you know, who is out of IMG Academy, rated a 5-star by some. And Dane Shore's a good prospect as well. So looks like another really strong offensive line class.
All right, overall, Alabama now has 2 5-stars, 9 4-stars, and 3 3-stars. And again, Nick Saban isn't recruiting to win recruiting rankings. At the same time, it's big for the fans, and we've talked about this before. The majority of the time, the highest rated high school players turn out to be the best college players. Not always, but in terms of what he does for this class, it's a big pickup toward that top 3 or 4 in the national rankings.
Yeah, because I do think when they do all these reevaluations, Gary, and some of these guys that you mentioned that are 4-stars now that Alabama has committed, possibly even Pritchard, I think he's got a chance to move up. Maybe get a 5th star, several do. And but you talked about the rankings and how really ultimately they don't matter. It's what you do when they get here.
Sure.
And Alabama's proven to be the best when you talk about development. So.
And it's a lot easier for young men to buy into the process here because they understand what the results will be. And most of the time, prospects are willing to be a little more patient at Alabama and wait their turn, maybe more so than at other programs. All right, Rodney has much more on Elijah Pritchard at TiderInsider.com. Well, Alabama volleyball has gotten off to a slow start in SEC play, unfortunately, falling at home to Texas A&M and on the road against LSU. it's not what you want if you're Alabama volleyball to get off to an 0-2 start. They're now 8-6 on the season, 0-2 in conference play. Alabama travels to Auburn for a pair of matches this weekend, playing the Tigers Saturday and on Sunday. Hopefully they can get on the winning track. And Alabama soccer was in action twice last week against SEC opponents as they hosted Mizzou on Thursday and were on the road at Vanderbilt on Sunday. The Crimson Tide able to win their first conference match of the season against Mizzou 2-1 thanks to goals by Katie Henderson and Riley Tanner. That put them at 1-1, but on Sunday they really struggled on the road in Nashville against a good Vanderbilt team, losing 4-0. Crimson Tide soccer will be back in action at home against LSU on Friday night. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV, some former Bama stars were once again in action during the third week of the NFL season. That's every week. They got more players in the league than any other school. And up next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Once again, the phone number, 205-348-9882. Go ahead and give us a call now. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. We'll be right back after this. Former Bama players all over the NFL again this weekend. Najee Harris. The Steelers are struggling, but how good was he? He caught 14 passes for 102 receiving yards and 14 rushings for 40 yards to go with it. The 14 receptions, the most ever by a running back in Steelers history. I mean, he's trying to do it all. Derrick Henry was just simply Derrick Henry. 28 carries, 113 yards. They're also using him more in the passing game with the new offensive coordinator there. 28 carries, as I said, for 113, but 3 receptions for 31. Julio Jones brought in 3 passes for 47 yards as the Titans beat the Colts. Henry Ruggs went for 78 yards on 4 receptions. Jalen Waddle went for 58 yards on 12 catches. Calvin Ridley, 61 yards on 8 receptions. Unfortunately, Mac Jones had his first rough start. He was, beat up pretty good against the Saints. And then last night, Jalen Hurts really struggled, but he got picked sixth, but it was by Trayvon Diggs, his old teammate. So Alabama guys on Alabama guys. Bama on Bama crying. And Devontae Smith was the intended receiver. So they're everywhere, Rod. All right, let's get to some emails and some phone calls. It's that time. And we got Sammy up there in Walker County with us first off tonight. Hey, Sammy.
Hey, Gary and Rodney. Hello, guys. Great job. I did see a LeBron Ray sighting the other night on the football field. I just want to state that if we can keep him healthy enough, that's always been his issue going forward, and including the game Saturday, he's a great player if we can just keep him healthy enough to play.
Yeah, Sammy, it was good to see him out there against Southern Miss, getting some snaps. Number 18 was on the field. Yeah, and that's the key, Hopefully he'll be healthy from here on out. They can integrate him into the defensive lineup and rotation a little more each game because he does bring 6'5", about 290 pounds of athleticism, of experience, of physicality. So I know they've got some really talented defensive linemen, but if LeBron Ray is healthy, he can be a big addition.
You know what? I think I saw him lining up on the nose in some of these third down situations, Sammy, and as a pass, in terms of getting a pocket push, I thought he did a really good job. So hopefully we see more of number 18.
You cannot get enough defensive linemen in this league. You just can't have enough of them. As you go through the league and the wear and tear starts to hit, you need a bunch of defensive linemen. Hopefully Alabama has enough to do what they need to do. All right, let's get to an email. And this comes from, this is a tweet. This is from Goal Line Stan. What defensive scheme works best versus Corral? More DBs, less pass rush, more blitz packages? Well, that's for Pete Golding and that defensive staff to figure out. I don't know. It's one of those things, if you blitz him and you don't get there, he's going to make you pay. All right, if you play more DBs and you play less rush and more coverage, he's going to throw it underneath, and he's going to, find little areas. So I think you got to mix it up, Rod. I think that's the case for any of these top quarterbacks. You can't do the same thing all the time defensively.
Well, and to his benefit now, I told you about the running game. You can line up and try to defend him in a lot of different ways. He can beat you throwing it. He can beat you running it. He can beat you scrambling, whether he's throwing on the run or pulling the ball down. But he's got a running game. He's got Jerrion Ealy, Snoop Connor, Henry Parrish. They've got some backs that can churn out some yards. They can run the football. They're really tough to defend. Again, I think when you talk about Pete Golding, I know he catches a lot of criticism, but this is a game, Gary. Look, I'm not sure this isn't the most difficult team in the country to try to stop.
All right, more Tider Insider TV is coming up right after this. With Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. This is Tider Insider Television. Let's get right back to the phone lines because we're getting a little short on time, and John is with us up in Jasper. Hey, John.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Doing great, man. What's up?
All right. I think we look good Saturday night. I know y'all said something about Ole Miss going to bring the kitchen sink. We're going to bring a defense. And I was at the game Saturday night. I seen everything.
we look good on the outside. They stopped the outside running. What we got to do Saturday night is we got to control the line of scrimmage right off the bat and put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, get him confused. We got to stop the run up the middle and on the outside.
Yeah, John, I think you're right. I mean, it all starts, as Rodney said, everybody talks about the explosive passing game. We've got about 25 seconds in this segment left, Rodney, but if you don't stop that run, they're going to gut you with it.
Oh, they can do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if they run the football successfully like they did last year, then the playbook's open. So
you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Got to stop that run first, because if not, they'll wear you out with it. All right, still to come, it's prediction time for Alabama and Ole Miss on isn't that a beautiful sky? Got a few clouds. You can see the sunset back there. Tuscaloosa, man, it's God's country. We're back after this. All right, it's that time in the show. It's prediction time, Rodney, and this is a big one. You'll start us off as you always do. Alabama and Ole Miss. How do you see it?
Well, everybody's talking about Ole Miss, and you know, you would think they were the #1 team in the country, but they're really good. Obviously, they've got a great offense. They're improved defensively, but look, this Alabama offense, I see these playmakers coming around. I see the confidence of Bryce Young. I mean, he's playing off the charts. Hopefully, the offensive line continues to develop, and you know, I think that they're going to take the challenge. They hear all this about the Ole Miss offense. I think Alabama's offense is going to play extremely well. I think the defense is going to accept that challenge, Gary, 45-31.
As I've said many times, folks, we do not discuss these picks in advance at all. The reason I say that is oftentimes our picks are very similar. I guess maybe we break the game down in similar fashion. I agree with Rodney. I think Ole Miss is a really good team, but it's in Tuscaloosa, and I think Alabama's ready. They caught a lot of flack for winning in a tough environment at Florida. I think that doesn't sit well with the coaches. I don't think it sits well with the players. I think they want to prove something Saturday afternoon. I think they will. I think Alabama wins this game 45-28 over the Ole Miss Rebels on Saturday afternoon. Well, that is going to do it for this week's show. Thank you for tuning in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch the replay tonight at 10:30, or you can catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. We'll leave you with Alabama football practice from this afternoon. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great night. Roll Tide.